This professional alien masseuse keeps finding new muscles to touch. Thanks for joining us on this journey through science fiction. Let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing for more content like this. Grant Vexley stepped off the shuttle onto the floating resort station Harmonia Bloom with one goal. Forget everything. Everything on warships was hell, and after 8 months of tension coils, reactor leaks, and officers who thought maintenance meant miracle, he'd earned some R&R. The resort smelled faintly of jasmine and ionized air. Rich aliens lounged in zero jacuzzis, servers with tentacle arms passed drinks that glowed. A few humans milled around, mostly diplomats or tourists. Grant looked painfully average in comparison, broad-shouldered, tired-eyed, and wearing the same jacket he'd had since Mars Academy. He approached a glowing kiosk screen. "Book a massage," he muttered, scrolling past options with names like molecular tranquility and scream extraction therapy. One caught his eye, four-armed deep-tissue holistic release practitioner Zalara. It was the only one without a 6-day waiting list. He hit confirm, and a gentle voice told him to proceed to room 7A. The massage suite was dim and warm, lit by floating orbs. Before he could sit, the door hissed and in walked a tall, elegant alien woman with deep violet skin, glowing gold eyes, and 4 long, graceful arms. She wore a sleeveless silver wrap that shimmered with each movement. Her expression was calm, but her eyes sparkled with something else, curiosity. "You're Grant Vexley?" she asked. "Yeah, just here for the standard." "There is no standard," she interrupted, already circling him. "Every body is different, every tension unique. Yours," she leaned closer, "yours is curious." Grant raised an eyebrow. "I'm just a guy with a stiff neck." "Perhaps. Or perhaps your body hides things it should not." He was about to joke about that being true for most humans when her hands touched his shoulders, all 4, warm, firm, precise. She guided him to the table like it was her idea all along. "Please, disrobe to your comfort level." He hesitated. "This isn't one of those spas, is it?" Zalara smiled. "I am a professional. You may keep your garments, though I do recommend shirtless for optimal access." Grant peeled off his jacket and shirt, flinching slightly as her hands immediately probed his upper back. No hesitation, no small talk, just pressure precise and searching. He expected the usual routine, knead, rub, done. Instead, her fingers pressed along his spine like she was decoding something. "You're clenching your thoracic nerves," she said. "That's not a thing." "Not in your charts, no, but your energy is congested here." Her thumb dug into a spot near his lower back. Grant jolted. "Okay, yeah, that's sore." "Emotion stored in muscle," she murmured. "But that's not all." She pressed her hand against the base of his spine and froze. Her gold eyes widened and she leaned closer. "There's something embedded here, metallic, not scar tissue, not bone." Grant tensed. "Say what now?" Zalara stepped back, her expression unreadable. "You are not aware?" "No. What kind of masseuse finds metal inside someone?" "A good one." Grant sat up, suddenly aware of every old injury he'd ever ignored. "Look, if something's wrong, I'll see a medic." Zalara didn't move. "It's reacting to my touch, faint electromagnetic resonance, very old tech, human." "I don't know," he said, voice hard. "I don't have implants." Perhaps not by choice, she reached for a scanner, then paused. "May I?" He nodded. The device hovered near his back and chirped softly. Zalara frowned. "Low frequency, emitter, it's activating." A cold sweat broke across Grant's neck. Activating what? "I do not know yet." He swung his legs off the table. "I didn't come here for weird sci-fi surprises. I came to relax." Zalara followed, serene despite the tension rising in the room. "And you will, but your body carries more than stress. This implant may be ancient dormant, but it was built for purpose." Grant grabbed his shirt. "I'm done. I'll get it checked out." You won't make it past the outer ring before someone picks up that signal, she said. It's broadcasting weekly now, but not for long. He stared at her, unsure whether she was serious or just eccentric. You think someone's listening? I know someone is, she said calmly, and if you leave without shielding it, they'll find you. Grant's instincts kicked in. Engineers didn't survive without learning to trust their gut, and his gut told him Zalara wasn't bluffing. Who they? She finally looked unsure. That depends, but old tech like this, probably not someone friendly. He cursed under his breath. I just wanted a massage. And you still need one, she replied. Your tension is getting worse. Grant actually laughed, short and bitter. You're unbelievable. She gave a little bow. I am very good at what I do. He pulled his shirt on, packing. All right, worst case scenario. Zalara tilted her head. You're hunted, tracked, possibly used as bait. They dig it out of you or use you to unlock something. Grant rubbed his temples. And what do you suggest? You stay. Let me finish the session. I'll contain the signal while we scan the implant's origin. He looked at her for a long second. She was calm, unbothered, almost annoyingly composed, but her eyes, there was something honest in them, maybe even worried. You want me to trust a stranger with glowing hands and zero credentials? I passed the Harmony Board of Touch Ethics, she said flatly. Grant blinked. That's a thing. Very prestigious. For a moment the tension cracked. He chuckled. She smiled. He exhaled. Fine. One more session, but no more poking around unless I say so. Agreed. She gestured toward the table. Lie down. Let's see what else you've been hiding. Grant laid back on the table with reluctant tension, already regretting the decision to stay. Zalara dimmed the room's ambient lights, her forehands moving with calm precision as she adjusted small gravity nodes on the walls. The table's surface shifted beneath him, forming perfectly to his spine, like memory foam with artificial intelligence. He hated how comfortable it was. You're quiet, Zalara said, her voice a little softer now. Just trying not to think about how I came here to get a massage and walked into a conspiracy. You walked into a moment, she replied. Not all surprises are traps. Some are just truths you hadn't noticed yet. Grant grunted, unimpressed. Do you rehearse lines like that, or do they just come to you? They come, she said, placing her lower hands along his ribs, upper ones at his shoulders. Now breathe. He did mostly to stop arguing. Her thumbs dug in slowly, working a line of tension along his scapula. For a few seconds, he actually forgot about the implant. Her touch wasn't just accurate, it was tuned. She read his body like a technician reading diagnostics, but she didn't speak again until she'd worked his back in silence for several long minutes. When she did, it was calm and clinical. The signal has stabilized, but the emitter is definitely old Terran military, she said. I'd guess late-cycle Earth-Mars conflict, pre-synthetic wave. Grant frowned. That's over 70 years ago. Correct. That would make it older than me. Also correct. Grant shifted his head to glance back. You're saying someone put this in my body before I was born? Possibly, Zalara said. Or it was passed on, there were trials, experiments. Not all of them left records. That's comforting. You want honesty or comfort? Honesty and maybe a beer. She smiled faintly. Honesty is free. Beer costs extra. He closed his eyes again, trying to relax as her hands moved down toward his lower back. The area around the implant buzzed faintly, like it was aware of her touch. His muscles twitched involuntarily. That spot reacting again, he said. I'm not applying pressure. It doesn't care. Zalara leaned in. It's not pain though, is it? No, it's weird, like heat, like it knows you. Possible. I interface with energy fields during massage. Very mild, but unique to my species. Well, the implant seems to like you. Not you. I didn't say that. She stopped for a second, just long enough for the quiet between them to feel heavier than it should have. Then her hands resumed, slower now, less clinical. "You don't trust easily," she said. "Nope." You joked to avoid tension. "Yup." And yet you stayed, still not sure why. "You will be." Grant gave her a sideways glance again. "You always this intense with your clients." Zalara's smile returned. "Only when they're accidentally carrying illegal military-grade hardware and don't realize they're projecting their emotional trauma through their latissimus dorsi." "I don't even know what that is. It's the muscle you're clenching because someone once betrayed you and you never processed it. That's not a diagnosis, that's a guess." "What's intuition?" she replied calmly. "And practice." He opened his mouth to argue, but didn't. The truth was, she wasn't wrong. He'd spent a lot of time pretending things didn't hurt, pretending nothing ever got to him. It worked until it didn't. The worst part was how easily she read it without even trying. "You ever consider doing something less? Hands-on?" he asked, trying to pivot. I tried diplomacy. My hands kept twitching. Grant chuckled again, despite himself. Then the table buzzed, not from her touch. A deep, low-frequency hum vibrated beneath them. Zalara pulled her hands back and stepped to the console on the wall, tapping a few commands. "What was that?" Grant asked, already sitting up. "The implant just pinged. Someone heard it." He swore. How far could it reach? "Depends on the tech, but if it's what I think it is, the signal could have jumped a relay chain. Dozens of systems." "You said you were containing it." "I said I was dampening it, but now that it's aware of you, it might be adjusting." Grant swung his legs off the table. "We need to leave." Zalara didn't argue. She grabbed a handheld device from the wall and shoved it into her sash. "I have a skimmer docked in the cargo wing. We'll need to move fast." "Hold up," Grant said, following her into the hall. "You're not just a masseuse, are you?" "I am," she said without stopping. "But I'm also a qualified field medic, minor neural tech, and second-place hoverball champion in the higher sector. First place was my sister, she cheats." Grant barked a laugh as they entered a turbolift. His mind spun with questions, but none of them mattered right now. If someone really had picked up the signal, every second counted. "You always this prepared for spa emergencies?" he asked. "You'd be surprised how often alien clients carry hidden tech." "Really?" "No, you're the first, but I've always hoped." The lift opened to a darker corridor. The docker here was utilitarian, unlike the polished wood grain aesthetic of the spa. This was the working underbelly of Harmonia Bloom. As they walked, Zalara explained, "I've been monitoring low-level anomalies around this station for months. Quiet signals, untraceable pings. When your implant flared, it matched one of them. So someone's been looking for me, or others like you." That didn't make Grant feel better. They reached a sealed dock. Zalara keyed in a code and the airlock opened to reveal a sleek, compact skimmer, nothing flashy, just fast. As she powered it up, Grant climbed into the co-pilot seat, still shirtless. She tossed him a jacket from the back seat. This was in the spa's lost and found. He pulled it on without question. "Thanks." The skimmer lifted off, exiting through a retractable roof. Harmonia Bloom shrank behind them, glittering against the stars. "Where are we going?" Grant asked. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can trace the implant signal without interference, and if someone follows us, then we make new friends." He looked over at her. "You're enjoying this." "I'm enjoying you," she said, meeting his eyes. "You're tense, sarcastic, and running from more than just one problem, but you stayed when you could have run." Grant didn't reply right away. The stars stretched ahead of them, and for a brief moment the silence felt almost peaceful. "You're not what I expected," he finally said, "and neither are you." They didn't speak for a while after that, but they didn't need to. Grant sat quietly in the co-pilot seat as the skimmer cut through open space, Zalara's hands working the controls with a practiced ease. She didn't rush. Her movements were smooth, confident, calm. He respected that. Still, the silence between them wasn't peaceful anymore. It was thick with unspoken questions. "So, he finally said, breaking it. "Where exactly are we headed?" An old mining satellite, abandoned off-grid just outside the Syrian Drift. I used it once for a side project. Let me guess, not a massage? No, she said, half smiling. Some old university friends and I were trying to measure psychic energy patterns in mineral-rich environments. He gave her a sideways glance. That's a fancy way of saying you snuck into a no-fly zone for research. I didn't say we had permission. Grant leaned back in his seat. Great. I'm trusting my life to a rebel masseuse with a science hobby. I prefer versatile problem solver. A light on the console blinked. Zalara tapped it and frowned. There it is again. Your implant just pinged. He leaned forward. We're not broadcasting right. No, but it might be bouncing off nav buoys. The tech in you is adaptive. It's learning. Grant shook his head. I didn't sign up to be a walking beacon. You did at some point, she said gently, even if you don't remember it. The skimmer's engines shifted pitch as they entered a rougher gravity field. Grant could see the satellite now, small, dark, with a shattered comms dish and a ring of debris orbiting it like teeth. This is your safe house, he asked. It's forgotten. That's what makes it safe. She docked them at one of the sealed airlocks, and the hiss of pressurization echoed through the cabin. Grant grabbed his jacket and followed her out. Inside the satellite was cold and dark. Emergency lights blinked faintly. Dust floated in the stale air, stirred by their boots. Zalara led the way down a narrow corridor until they reached a room half filled with dusty consoles and an old fusion generator. She powered it up. The lights flickered, then steadied. Grant stepped toward one of the terminals. This thing still runs. Barely, she said, already opening a compartment and pulling out a slim device. But it's enough. She motioned for him to sit on the examination platform near the center of the room. He hesitated. What's the plan? I'm going to scan the implant's signal origin, she replied, snapping on a pair of low-level neural readers, then trace where it's trying to connect. Will it hurt? Not if you stay still. Grant grumbled, but sat. Zalara connected the device to a portable display. She placed 2 fingertips along his spine just above the implant's location and turned on the scanner. Grant felt a deep thrum pass through him, like an old subwoofer vibrating through his ribs. Okay, that's uncomfortable. Hold still, she murmured. The screen flickered with data. Zalara leaned in, eyes narrowing. Interesting, she said. This isn't just a tracker, it's a neural key. To what? She pulled back slightly. Something old, something locked. Whatever it is, you're the access code. You're the frown. That doesn't make sense. I'm not special. I'm just an engineer. Engineers make excellent vessels, she said. Brains train for complex systems, not easily broken by chaos. The military loved people like you. He let that sink in. You think I was part of a program. I think you were the program. Before he could respond, the console beeped. A sharp, high-frequency ping echoed through the room. Zalara spun to check the readout. No, she whispered. Grant stood. What is it? The implant responded to a long-range handshake. In English. Someone pinged it, and it answered. How far? She turned to him, eyes serious. Far. This wasn't a local signal. It came from outside the sector. He stiffened, and now they know where I am. Yes, she said. But not just you, me too. They stared at each other for a beat. Grant broke the silence first. Still think you're just a masseuse? Zalara smirked faintly. Never said I was only that. They began powering down the gear. Grant grabbed the scanner and coiled its cord. You think they'll come here? If I were them, I'd be en route already. I'm not a jaw tight, then we can't stay long, Zalara agreed. We'll need supplies and a ship better than my skimmer. They exited the room quickly, retracing their steps toward the dock. As they passed a shattered window, Grant paused. Something moved in the black beyond. He grabbed Zalara's arm. Wait! She looked out too. A shape long, angular, too sharp for a civilian ship, lifted silently into view. "That's a Carthan interceptor," she said, voice suddenly low. "Carthan, as in the warlords who don't play nice. Very much those Carthans." Grant swore under his breath. "They're early. They must have had your signal before this, maybe even before you left the station." He turned back toward the skimmer. "Then we need to run. Now." But as they reached the docking bay, another ping hit the implant. Sharper, more painful. Grant stumbled, clutching his back. Zalara caught him, the signal spiking, trying to force a response. "Then stop it," he growled. She knelt behind him, hands pressing flat against his spine. "I'm going to short the feedback loop, but it'll feel like you're being hit with a voltage spike." "Perfect," he said through clenched teeth. He activated her energy field. A jolt surged through him, his vision blurred. It felt like lightning danced across his nerves, but after a few seconds the burning stopped. The signal dropped. Grant exhaled hard. "That sucked. You're stable again, but not for long." Zalara helped him up. "They'll board the satellite soon. Then let's not be here when they do." Back in the skimmer, they blasted off before the interceptor could lock on. The ship jolted through a narrow field of debris. Zalara pushed the engines hard. "Where now?" Grant asked. She hesitated, then said, "I know someone who might help. A friend, kind of." "Define kind of." "She owes me a favor. She also might shoot us on sight." Grant rubbed his temple. "Sounds about right." He threw him a quick glance. "Still trust me?" He hesitated for only a second. "I don't know if I trust you, but I'd rather face this with you than alone." Zalara's expression softened. She didn't say anything, but her hand brushed his as she adjusted the throttle. They flew on in silence, chased by questions, memories, and the people who wanted answers buried. The skimmer cut through the dark between systems like a blade, silent and fast. Grant sat in the co-pilot seat, eyes fixed on the stars, muscles sore from the signal surge and Zalara's desperate shutdown. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the satellite. He didn't push her. They both knew things had changed. She finally broke the silence. Her name? Calith. She's a tech broker, reclusive, paranoid, but smart. If anyone can tell us what your implant tied to, it's her. Where is she? Station Garros 9, edge of the Aussies belt. No patrols, no laws, just credits and survival. Grannick's hail sounds welcoming. She lives above a scrapyard bar and communicates through a 5-layer encryption system made from a toaster and a retired weather satellite. That's oddly specific. He's oddly specific. Grant sat back. His mind was running in too many directions. He kept circling one point, someone wanted this implant, and it had nothing to do with him. He was just the tool or the key. "What do you think it unlocks?" he asked. Zalara didn't look away from the controls. Honestly, something dangerous. That tech was made for war. The old Earth factions didn't spend billions building secrets just to forget them. But I forgot. Or someone helped you. That thought stuck in his head. He didn't remember any procedure, any military experimentation. His life had been normal. Difficult, sure, but not part of some Black Ops nightmare, unless his memories weren't real. The cockpit beeped. "We're coming up on Garros 9, Zalara said. "Get ready." Garros 9 wasn't much to look at, just a long cylinder of rust and lights patched together with parts from dozens of different stations. It spun slowly, surrounded by derelict ships and floating trash. A small docking arm extended toward them as they approached. Zalara keyed into a calm panel. "This is Zalara Rune, requesting private dock and clearance code Delta Gamma V." The static buzzed for a second, then a voice scratchy and low. "Zalara, you've got a pair showing up here without warning. What do you want?" "Information, and maybe some hospitality." "Hospitality costs extra." Zalara smiled. "You still owe me for the crate of Varan neurostimulators I smuggled past customs for you." "Fine, dock too. But if your friend so much as breathes wrong, I'm spacing you both." "Understood." The line cut. Zalara guided them in. "Friendly," Grant muttered. "She didn't kill us on sight. That's friendship here." They docked. The airlock opened into a corridor that smelled like engine grease and stale drinks. A few drunk miners shuffled past. Music pulsed from deep inside the station. Zalara led the way without hesitation, moving like someone who had spent too much time in places like this. Grant followed close behind. They reached a narrow stairwell leading up into a cramped loft stuffed with tech junk, broken drones, data cores, half-melted processors. A makeshift command center sat at the far end, screens flickering. Khalith sat in the middle of it all. She was half machine, her lower jaw replaced with chrome plating, one eye glowing bright blue. Her arms were lined with interface ports, and her legs were synthetic. She looked up as they entered, then let out a mechanical laugh. Zalara still dragging in trouble. Zalara smiled, only the interesting kind. Khalith's eyes shifted to Grant. Human that's new. His implants broadcasting a military-grade neural key, Zalara said. We need to know what it's tied to. Khalith's mood changed instantly. Her smile dropped. You brought that in here. It's shielded, Zalara replied, mostly. Khalith stood and grabbed a handheld scanner. Sit, she barked. Grant obeyed. She pressed the scanner against his spine and watched the readout. Good code, she muttered. Real old Gen 3 military imprinting tech. They buried this stuff after the last colony uprisings, said it was too unstable. Grant frowned. What was it for? Adaptive warfare? Psychological payloads? The implants could hijack neural patterns, trigger instincts, even overwrite memory. They were supposed to turn soldiers into living weapons, efficient, obedient, unbreakable. Great, Grant said. So I'm a time bomb. Khalith shook her head. No, you're the key to turning one on. She moved back to her desk, typing fast. And based on what I'm seeing, the system your implant tied to isn't just any unit. It's called Project Siphon. Grant tensed. That sounds terrible. It was. Siphon wasn't a weapon. It was a failsafe, a way to end wars in one strike. The theory was that if you could hijack one person's nervous system and use it to transmit behavioral overrides across a battlefield, you could shut down an army before the first shot. That's insane, Grant said. And illegal. The project was dismantled, or so we thought. Zalara stepped forward. You think someone rebuilt it? Khalith nodded. Or found the old framework. The implant in your back is a signal primer. You're not just a key, you're a trigger. Grant sat back. So the Carthans aren't chasing me, they want Siphon. And if they get it, Khalith said, they'll control whatever's still linked to that system. Which could be what? Grant asked. Khalith shrugged. Depends. Could be 1,000 old implants, could be one, but if it's anything like the files say, it's enough to end free will wherever it reaches. Silence settled in the room. Then Zalara said, Can you disable it? Khalith hesitated. Maybe, but I'll need time, and if you activate it even once, there might be no going back. Grant nodded slowly. Then let's make sure no one gets that chance. Zalara turned to him. We'll need to draw them out, trap them somewhere isolated. I know a place, Khalith said, but it'll cost you. Zalara smiled. Put it on my tab. Khalith laughed again. Your tab's longer than a Taurian lifespan. Grant stood, his mind spinning with everything he'd learned. He wasn't just running anymore, he was standing on the edge of a forgotten weapon, a relic of a time when people thought control was the same as peace, and now he had to stop it from being used again. As they prepared to leave, Khalith glanced at Zalara. You trust him? I do, Zalara said without hesitation. Khalith nodded. Then good luck, you're going to need it. Grant and Zalara walked out together. He didn't say anything until they were back at the skimmer. You trust me? She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. You didn't run, you didn't break, and you keep looking at me like I'm not just some alien with weird hands. You're not, he said. For the first time, she didn't deflect. She didn't joke. She just looked at him quiet and open. Then she said, Let's finish this. Zalara flew the skimmer in silence, her focus locked on the navigation screen. Grant watched her hands on the controls, steady and confident. The console lights reflected off her skin, casting faint violet glows that danced along the curve of her jaw. He wanted to say something, ask what she was thinking, but the weight of what Calith told them still hung too heavily in the air. Project Siphon, a failsafe, a neural hijacker, and he was the trigger. He leaned back in the seat, rubbing the back of his neck where the implant sat, dormant but not forgotten. It wasn't just some military junk anymore. It was the last key to a weapon that could crush free will. And for all he knew, it had been inside him his whole life. "Where are we going now?" he finally asked. Zalara tapped a star on the screen. A dead moon in the VEC system, no traffic, no life. Calith set up a shell node there for black market tests a few cycles ago. We can use it to isolate your implant signal and test control overrides without drawing attention. Grant raised an eyebrow. "We're going to test it. We have to. If someone tries to activate it remotely, we need to know how it reacts and how to block it." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right." They reached the VEC system 5 hours later. The moon was barren, cracked and gray, with no atmosphere and jagged canyons cutting across its surface like scars. Zalara set the skimmer down near a rock formation that barely looked stable. Inside the cave, hidden by the shadows, sat a single dome-shaped outpost covered in dust and ice. She keyed in a passcode and the door opened with a wheeze. The room inside was tight and cold, lined with consoles and storage crates. A table sat in the center, connected to an old medical rig and a cracked hollow display. It smelled like stale oxygen and rusted wires. Zalara got to work without a word. She set up a containment field around the medical rig, pulled diagnostic cables from the wall, and nodded toward the table. "Lie down, shirt off. Not raised an eyebrow. You always this bossy. Only with people carrying doomsday devices in their spine." He pulled off his shirt and climbed onto the table. She connected the cables gently but firmly, each connection sending a brief tingle through his nerves. "What happens if it activates while I'm in here?" he asked. "I've modified the rig to block external signals and keep yours contained. If it flares, we shut it down fast." Grant nodded, heart thudding harder than he wanted to admit. "Let's get it over with." Zalara placed her hands along his back, fingertips aligned with the implant. Her touch was slower this time, deliberate, not just clinical. Something about it felt steadier, trusting. "I'm going to stimulate the neural casing," she said. "Mildly, no pain, just enough to see what responds. Go ahead." She closed her eyes. A soft pulse moved through her hands, and he felt a warmth spread across his back. Not heat exactly, but energy, like his nerves were listening. Then it hit. A flash, a surge of thought that wasn't his. A voice not in words, but in feeling authority command absolute focus. For 1 second, Grant felt like someone else was trying to wear his skin. He jerked, but Zalara pressed her hands down. "Stay with me," she said, voice firm. "It's not you, it's the implant reaching for a link." "I feel it," he said through clenched teeth. "It's looking for something." Zalara's touch changed, her hands shifting slightly, the pulse softened. "Focus on me," she said. "Not it." Grant tried, her voice cut through the pressure like a line in water. Slowly the signal faded, withdrawing like a hand pulling back from fire. He breathed hard. "It's alive. It's aware." She nodded, and it's learning. He sat up. It tried to take control just for a second. I wasn't myself. Zalara looked at the readouts. It didn't fully activate, but the override is in there. It's buried deep dormant, waiting for a signal strong enough to wake it. Grant clenched his fists. "We need to remove it." "We can't. Not without killing you." He stood, packing the room. "Then we bury it. Trap it somehow." Zalara walked over and reached for his hand. "There's another way." "What?" The implant reacted to my touch. When I calmed it, it listened. "We might be able to form a lock, something that ties the override commands to me. If I'm the only one it responds to, I can act as a buffer." Grant looked at her. "You do that." "I've already started," she said. Every time I touched it, it responded. The more I tune to you, the more control I have." He frowned. "That sounds like it only works if you're around." "I will be." Grant didn't respond right away. He sat back on the table, arms resting on his knees. "This wasn't your problem," he said. "Maybe not, but I chose to make it mine." They were close now, her eyes on his, not reading, not analyzing, just watching, the way people looked at each other when the masks came off. "You think this is going to work?" he asked. "I believe in patterns, in energy. You're not just a key, you're still you. That means you have a say in what happens next." He stared at her for a moment, then let out a short breath. "You ever think about what you'd be doing if we hadn't met like this?" She smiled, probably still kneading knots out of entitled ambassadors on Harmonia Bloom. "And me? Still pretending you're not tired, not angry, not lost." He laughed low and real. Guests were both bad at hiding things. She stepped closer. Her hands rested lightly on his shoulders, not professional, not clinical, just warm, present. "You're not alone in this," she said. "Not anymore." He didn't move, didn't speak, just let the moment stay where it was. For the first time since this started, the implant in his back felt quiet. Not gone, but quiet. The calm didn't last long. The outpost's proximity alerts snapped them both out of it. A harsh tone echoed through the small dome, followed by red flashes across the console. Grant moved first, grabbing his shirt and pulling it on. Zalara rushed to the terminal and brought up the feed. A ship had entered orbit, sleek, black, fast. Carthan markings lit up across the hull. "They found us," she said. Grant joined her eyes, narrowing. "How?" The implant must have pinged again, just a whisper, but their tracking noise now. He ran a hand through his hair. How many? One ship small, probably a scout team. Grant frowned. They wouldn't risk Siphon's activation on a guess. This is a grab, which means more are waiting nearby. He looked at her. "Can we fight?" She turned to him. "With what? This place has barely enough shielding to block a cooking unit. We're not staying." Zalara activated a signal scramble on the panel and sent a burst to Calith's network. Then she moved fast, collecting her gear. Grant followed her into the hall, glancing at the ceiling like he expected it to fall. "We getting out in the skimmer?" "No, that's the first place they'll check. We use the subtunnel. There's a secondary rover below the outpost. Old, but it'll drive." She led him through a maintenance hatch and down a metal ladder into a tight crawl space. The tunnel was cramped, pipes on both sides and enough dust to clog a filter. They didn't speak until they reached a hatch at the end. Zalara tapped the code and the door groaned open. A squat, armored transport sat behind it, half buried in moon dust. "You sure this works?" Grant asked. "No, but it has wheels." They climbed inside. Zalara bypassed the ignition and kicked on emergency power. The engine coughed, then hummed. The rover lurched forward, rising from the dirt. "Destination?" she asked. Grant scanned the horizon, somewhere with better odds. Zalara nodded. "I've got one." She drove them toward the jagged cliffs to the east. Between them, the black scout ship landed near the outpost, kicking up a cloud of dust. By the time figures emerged, the rover had already vanished into the canyons. Inside the cramped cockpit, Grant glanced at her. "You ever fought these guys before?" "Once I lost." He nodded, encouraging. "They don't negotiate. They don't bluff. And if they get you, they'll rip the implant out and tear through your nervous system until they get what they want." "Which is?" "The siphon signal. Then they'll build a transmitter, amplify the range, and turn half the galaxy into obedient husks." Grant's jaw tightened, not happening. The rover bounced hard as they entered a narrow ridge. Zalara slowed down, navigating around collapsed rock and jagged drops. "There's a cave system near the cliff face. It connects to an old mining shaft. We can lose them in there if they follow." "How far?" 3 clicks. The rover hit another bump. A loud clunk came from beneath. "That sounded bad," Grant muttered. Zalara frowned and checked the readout. "We lost stabilizer power. Ride's going to get rough." Grant braced himself. Of course we did. As they rattled over the last stretch, a low boom echoed across the surface. Grant turned to the rear camera feed. They launched a drone, small, fast. Zalara hissed through her teeth. We won't outrun it. Then we outsmarted. He reached under the dash and popped the access panel. Zalara didn't ask what he was doing. She just drove. Grant yanked out a navigation beacon and a short-range transponder, then started rewiring. You have a plan, she asked. Sort of. I'll spoof our signal and toss it over the cliff. It'll follow the fake. He worked quickly, bypassing the ID circuit and looping the transponder's feed through an open loop. Zalara pointed. We're almost at the drop. Grant finished the last connection and handed it to her. Throw it out the side when I say. They crested a ridge. Below was a wide ravine filled with jagged rock. Grant waited, watching the drone blip closer on the screen. Now Zalara yanked the panel and flung the device into the void. It bounced twice, skidded, and then blinked rapidly. The drone veered, chasing the decoy. Grant let out a breath. You're good, Zalara said. I built decoys for mining crews. Came in handy when pirates started sniffing around. You never told me that. You never asked. They reached the cave a few minutes later. Zalara parked the rover and cut power. The mouth of the cave was wide enough to slip through but hard to see from above. They climbed out, muscles stiff, and made their way inside. The rock walls glowed faintly from mineral traces. The air was cold and dry. They found a flat section of stone and sat down. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Grant said, You said the implant is syncing with you. She nodded. It's tuning itself to my energy patterns. Not normal behavior, but it means I have a limited influence over it. And if someone else tries to activate it, they'll need to override that bond. Grant looked at her. How strong is the bond? She met his eyes, strong enough that when you were on the table and had tried to take over, I could feel it. You felt it. She nodded, like static in my mind, a ripple through something I wasn't supposed to touch, but I held on. Grant let the words hang in the air. Then he said, So we're connected now. Yes. You didn't sign up for this either. I chose it. They sat there, side by side, silent, stretching into comfort instead of tension. Grant leaned back against the wall. Zalara moved a little closer. I don't know what happens next, he said. Neither do I. But if I go down, I'd rather it be next to someone who actually gives a damn. She smiled. I do. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. Inside, the wind swept across the rocks. Inside, their breathing slowed, and for the first time in days, the signal in Grant's back didn't stir. Grant woke to the sound of soft movement, his back pressed against the cave wall, the floor cold beneath him. Zalara was kneeling nearby, adjusting the portable scanner. Her expression was focused, jaw tight, shoulders squared. She hadn't slept. How long was I out? He asked, voice rough. 4 hours. He pushed himself upright, anything on the scanner. She shook her head. The Carthan ship is still circling. They're not leaving. They know you're here even if they lost the trail. Grant rubbed his face, trying to push away the exhaustion. So we're boxed in. For now, she said. But I've been analyzing the signal pattern from your implant. There's a rhythm to it, a repeating code, like a heartbeat. It changes slightly whenever I touch you. He glanced over. That a metaphor? She allowed a small smile. Not this time. He stood and stretched. So what does it mean? It means the implant's not just bonded to your biology. It's learning mind, adapting to my neural patterns, which confirms what we thought. If we stay connected long enough, I can fully override its external activation triggers. Fully. She nodded. If I can do that, you'd be safe from remote control. They could still try a physical extraction, but that's different, more risky for them. Grant folded his arms. And for you? Her silence was answer enough. You think it'll hurt you? He said. I don't know. I've never bonded with war tech before, but if I don't try, they win. He took a step closer. What if syncing fully with it hurts you? Then we find another way, or we stop before it goes that far. Grant frowned. That's not good enough. I don't want this thing turning on you. She stood, brushing the dust off her knees. You don't get to carry this alone anymore. I made that choice. He looked at her for a long second. I'm not afraid of dying, Zalera. I'm afraid of dragging someone else down with me. Don't fall alone, she said. They held each other's gaze until the silence felt less like pressure and more like understanding. The scanner beeped. Grant turned to it. What's that? She moved to check it. Not Carthan's. This signal's weaker, scattered its local. Other survivors. No, it's a broadcast node, half buried. Looks like a relay tower from the old mining days, still transmitting. Grant leaned in. Think we can use it. Zalera tapped through the signal logs. If it still works, we can send a ghost ping, make it look like the siphon signal reactivated somewhere else. A decoy, she nodded. We just need to get to the tower. Grant grabbed his pack. Let's move. They exited the cave and followed a narrow ridge across the ravine. The terrain was rough, but the tower was visible in the distance, tilted, half collapsed, with faded markings barely legible on the side. As they approached, Zalera knelt by the base and pulled a control panel off. Batteries dead, but the transmitter's intact. If I can jumpstart it, I can bounce a fake signal across the surface. I crouched beside her. I'll help. She handed him a small coil and motioned to hold it while she rewired the power feed. Sparks flicked as she connected the last line. The console flickered to life. It's not much, she said, but it'll be enough to draw attention away from the cave. Good. She typed quickly, crafting a fake siphon pulse, similar to what the implant would release, but scrambled just enough to be untraceable to Grant himself. Ready? She asked. Send it. She hit the button. A low hum echoed through the tower. The light blinked once, then again. Signal sent. They both waited, eyes on the scanner. Within a minute, a Carson vessel changed course. It veered toward the far side of the moon, away from their position. Grant let out a breath. You're good. I'm persistent. They moved quickly back to the cave, careful not to leave a trail. Once inside, Zalera set up a new field generator around the entrance, weak but enough to mask body heat. As she finished calibrating, Grant stepped up behind her. What happens after we beat them? She paused. If we beat them. He shook his head. No, when? She straightened. I don't know, I guess. I keep traveling, keep helping people, maybe open a real spa on a planet with beaches and drinks that don't fight back. He smiled, and me. She tilted her head. What do you want? Grant shrugged. I haven't thought that far ahead in a long time. Think now. He looked at her, really looked at her. I want peace. Quiet. Be someone who touches my back without waking up ancient military software. Zalera laughed, soft and unexpected. That's a tall order. You could be part of that, you know. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers traced the edge of the scanner, then stilled. I'm not used to being anyone's future. Neither am I, he said. But maybe it's time we try being more than what we were built to be. Her eyes met his. She reached for his hand without hesitation. The implant in his spine stirred like it could feel her touch again, but it didn't flare or threaten. It quieted. He stepped closer. She didn't move away. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Good, he replied, because I'm starting to think this thing might only trust you. Maybe it's not the only one. Her voice dropped low, serious and warm. He kissed her before he could talk himself out of it. Her lips were cool, smooth, but the heat between them wasn't subtle. She responded like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. No urgency, no fear, just trust. When they finally pulled back, she rested her forehead lightly against his. I meant what I said, she whispered. You're not alone. Neither are you. Inside, the wind stirred the moon dust, but inside the cave, everything had finally gone still. The stillness didn't last. A low-frequency pulse rattled the scanner an hour later, cutting through the cave's quiet like a warning bell. Grant's snapped awake. Zalara was already at the console, hands moving fast across the keys. He stood alert. "What is it?" "Grant's just activated a siphon response beacon, not ours." Grant stepped up behind her, so they're testing the real system. They're done hunting. They think they have what they need. Grant's jaw clenched, do they? Zalara glanced at him. "If they've extracted the signal pattern from our decoy and found a way to simulate your presence, maybe, but it won't hold for long, so we still have time." We nodded, a few hours maybe, but they'll realize the beacon isn't linked to the implant. When they do, they'll come back, hard. He grabbed his gear. "Then we go on the offensive." Zalara turned to him, surprised. "What do you have in mind? You said they need me to fully activate Siphon, right?" "Yes. Then we give them what they want, a target." She stepped closer. "That's dangerous. I'm not walking around with this thing in my spine just to hide in caves and hope they forget about me. We hit them before they regroup. One ship, one shot." Zalara hesitated. "You're serious. I've never been more." She looked him over, the weight of the moment showing in her face. Then she nodded once. "All right, I know a way." Grant raised a brow. "I thought you said we didn't have weapons. I didn't say we didn't have options." She led him deeper into the tunnels. They emerged near a collapsed shaft, barely wide enough to crawl through. Zalara moved aside a sheet of metal, revealing a maintenance bay hidden behind a camouflage screen. A sleek one-person fighter sat half disassembled on the platform, patched with different alloys and custom modifications. Grant stepped forward. "You've been holding out on me." Zalara smirked. "Not exactly. I salvaged it after a failed deal, was going to sell it, never got around to finishing the repairs." Grant walked a slow circle around the ship. "It'd fly, with enough luck and power cells." "I'll take it." She tossed him a toolkit. "Let's get to work." For the next 2 hours, they moved in rhythm. Zalara calibrated the controls while Grant rewired the engine systems. She worked on shielding, and he checked the dampeners. There wasn't time to do it all, but there was just enough to make it fly and hold under pressure. When the power cell locked into place, the ship hummed to life. Grant slid into the cockpit and flipped the main switches. The controls responded. He tapped the comm line. "Not bad." Zalara stood beside the cockpit, hands on her hips. "Remember, this isn't a warbird. You're fast, not armored. Hit, move, disappear. What's the plan? We lure them to the upper atmosphere. Let them see you. Let the implant ping once. When they bite, you lead them to the canyon on the dark side. I'll be waiting with a charge set up. One shot through the rock face collapses the whole thing." Grant frowned. "And you're sure it'll work?" "No, but it's better than waiting for them to breach this cave." He gave a slow nod. "You coming with? I'll be right behind you." He paused, then leaned forward. "I mean, after this. After the siphon stuff is done." Her eyes didn't move from his. "I'm not walking away." He smiled good. She stepped back and he launched the ship. It shot out of the mountain like a dart, climbing fast. The stars opened up above him. He angled toward the upper layer of the moon's thin atmosphere and cut power just enough to drop off radar. He waited. Then he reached down and flipped a switch that sent a pulse through the implant. It answered, just one ping, just enough. Within minutes, a Carthan cruiser broke orbit and came into view, sleek, fast, and hungry. Grant didn't hesitate. He turned and dove toward the dark side. The ship followed. He opened comms. "Zalara there chasing, one ship, no escorts. I see it, bring them in 10 seconds. He skimmed low across the canyon floor, weaving between jagged stone. The cruiser pressed closer, its weapons lighting up the ridgeline behind him. 5 seconds. He pulled up sharply now. From the top of the canyon, a line of light cut across the shadows. Then the wall exploded. Rock and debris rained down, burying the Carthan ship mid-turn. Grant barely cleared the blast radius. The shock waves spun him, and the cockpit flickered, but the fighter held. He circled wide and dropped altitude, scanning for movement. Nothing, just smoke, in silence. He landed beside the ridge where Zalara stood, the detonator still in her hand. Her face was streaked with dust, her expression calm. He climbed out of the ship and walked to her. They looked down together at the smoldering wreckage. Think that did it? He asked. It bought us time, she said. Maybe even peace. Temporary. Maybe. He turned to her, but the implant's still inside me. Yes, but it's quiet. You're not broadcasting anymore, not unless you want to. Grant nodded. Then maybe I'm not just a trigger. No, she said. You're still the key, but now you decide what it unlocks. They stood in silence, wind sweeping across the canyon. For the first time, the danger felt like it was fatting. Grant reached out and took her hand. What if we left this place behind? He asked. No more chasing signals, just normal. Normal doesn't exist out here. Then something close. She looked at him, smile, returning. I've never had normal, but I try it with you. He pulled her in, not rushed, not desperate, just certain. When their lips met, it wasn't a question, it was the answer. The wreckage of the Carthan cruiser still smoldered beneath a thin haze of dust. Grant sat on the wing of the fighter, legs dangling over the edge, staring out at the ruins. The air was still and quiet now, too quiet for comfort. Zalara approached from behind, carrying a compact sensor dish cradled in her arms. Nothing on long range, she said. No new signals. If they sent a distress call, it didn't get through the interference. Grant looked up at her. That's good. For now, she set the dish down and wiped her hands on a rag. We bought ourselves time, not forever. Doesn't have to be forever, just enough. Zalara studied him, like she was searching for something behind his words. You're different. He raised an eyebrow. Wreck a few enemy ships, dodge a mind control implant, kiss a strange woman on a dead moon, and suddenly you're deep. You're more calm now. Before you were bracing for something to go wrong. Now you're waiting for it to stay right. He shrugged. Maybe I'm learning how to stop looking over my shoulder. She sat beside him. Their shoulders touched. I keep thinking about the people who built Siphon, he said. They must have thought it was a solution, a way to win a war without killing anyone, control instead of blood. But that's still killing. You take someone's will, it's the same thing. Zalara nodded slowly. They probably told themselves it was mercy. He stared out at the horizon. They built something awful and tried to hide it, and now I've got a piece of it inside me. The last one, maybe. You're not at Grant. It's not who you are. I know, he said quietly, but it still wants to be used. I can feel it sometimes, even when it's quiet. It's like it's waiting for permission. She rested a hand on his back. He didn't flinch. We'll deal with it, she said, together. Grant let the silence sit for a while before speaking again. You ever think about what comes next? Not just after this, but really next? I used to, before I got caught up in all this. I thought I'd settle somewhere warm, open a studio, maybe take students. Students, she smiled. Yeah, train people like me, the healing arts, not just touch, but focus, patience, energy, awareness. He turned to her. You'd be good at that. Thanks, she looked away. I gave it up a while ago, didn't think I had anything left to offer. You do, he said. You got me through this. Her smile faltered just a little. I still worry the bond might burn out. What do you mean? She hesitated. The implant it's drawing more and more of its stability from my neural field. That's fine for now, but over time it could create feedback, drain. If it takes too much, I could lose my link, my clarity. Your mind, not all at once, but piece by piece. Grant looked at her, suddenly serious. And you didn't tell me this earlier. I didn't want to scare you. I can handle scared. She looked back at him. I wasn't sure I could. He stood, packing a few steps before turning back. Then we find a way to neutralize it, disable the implant without hurting either of us. That's easier said than done. Then we do what we've been doing since this started, we figure it out. She nodded slowly, then stood too. There's a facility, hidden off-grid. It was used for siphon testing during its early phase. I didn't mention it before because I didn't know if we'd survive this long, and now we have a chance. Grant took a breath. Let's go. Zalara activated the ship's nav beacon and loaded coordinates. Grant climbed into the co-pilot seat this time. Neither of them spoke for a while as the fighter lifted into the black sky. When they reached open space, Zalara engaged the pulse drive. Stars stretched around them, distant and cold. The implant in Grant's back pulsed once, soft, like a heartbeat reminding him it was still there. He touched the side of his neck. Feels like it knows where we're going. It might, Zalara said, but that's part of the plan. They arrived at the coordinates 2 hours later. The facility was buried beneath the crust of an asteroid, hidden behind radiation shields and decoy signals. The entrance was narrow, but the hangar just big enough for the fighter. As they disembarked, old lights flickered to life. The air inside was stale, untouched. The place hadn't been disturbed in decades. Dust clung to the consoles. Vines of old cabling hung from the ceiling. It smelled like forgotten secrets. Zalara led them through a central hallway until they reached a chamber marked with faded Tarrant symbols. Inside, a scanning rig waited, circular, with a seat at its center and conduits that snaked into the walls. This was the reset station, she said, designed to wipe the imprint data if a subject broke protocol. You think it still works? Only one way to find out. Grant stepped toward the chair. If this backfires, you'll lose the implant, but maybe lose yourself too. Memories, motor function, even personality overlays. And you. If the bond holds, I'll take some of the blow, but I won't know how much until we do it. He turned to her. Then we wait, we research, we don't rush. Zalara took his hand, or we trust each other one more time. Grant hesitated, then he sat in the chair. She moved quickly, connecting cables and activating systems. The room hummed to life, light pouring from the walls. A soft vibration started in his spine. Signals peaking, she said, "It's aware." Grant breathed slowly. "I'm ready." She placed her hand on the back of his neck, the other on his chest. Her energy moved through him, warm and strong. The implant responded, flaring once, then settling. "Here we go," she whispered. She activated the sequence. Pain lanced through his back, not sharp but deep, like something being unraveled inside him. His mind reeled, memories flickered faces, names, smells, some he knew, some he didn't. A lifetime compressed into seconds, then gone. Zalara's hands never left him. The hum rose, the chamber vibrated. Then silence. Grant slumped forward, breathing hard. Zalara knelt in front of him. "Grant." He looked up and smiled. "It's quiet." She exhaled, shoulders shaking. "It's gone," he asked. She nodded. "No signal, no pulse, you're free." He reached for her hand. "We're free." And for the first time since this started, the weight in his chest finally lifted. The quiet in the chamber wasn't just silence, it was peace. The kind Grant hadn't felt in years. No hum in his spine, no pressure crawling up his nerves. The siphon signal was gone, dismantled in the reset station. Its ghost finally laid to rest. He sat still for a while, breathing, grounding himself in the moment. Zalara knelt beside him, watching closely, her hands still gripping his. He looked at her and nodded. "I'm all right." She didn't answer at first, just let go of a breath she'd been holding too long. Then she smiled, small, real, relieved. "You look like someone who just won." "I did," he said. "We both did." He stood slowly. The soreness was there, but it was his own. No hidden codes humming under his skin, no old military tricks ready to take over, just him. Zalara helped disconnect the last of the cables, her hands steady even after everything. "You know," she said, "this place might be the last piece of siphon tech in the galaxy." Good, Grant replied. "Let it rot." She chuckled. "We could bury it or seal it off, maybe send a false shutdown report to confuse anyone still watching." Grant looked around at the walls, the dim lights, the cracked control panels. "Let's shut it down, no trail, no trace. We leave this in the past where it belongs." They spent the next hour wiping the system, purging the last fragments of code, cutting power to the deep relays. When it was done, Zalara rigged the entry shaft with a timed collapse, just enough to make sure no one ever came looking. As they walked back through the corridors to the hangar, Grant glanced over at her. "You all right?" he asked. "Tired," she said. "But yeah, I think I am." "You're linked to the implant." She tapped her temple, faded. "It's not pulling anymore. I think whatever was forming between us through that thing, it's gone." Grant raised a brow. "And what about what was forming without it?" She smiled. "That's still here." They stepped into the hangar, and for the first time since they'd arrived, it felt like the air was lighter. The fighter sat waiting, patched and dented, but still flight-worthy. Grant stood beside the cockpit and looked around one last time, feels strange leaving it behind. "Some ghosts don't deserve visitors," Zalara said. "We gave them a funeral. Let's go." They launched into open space with no resistance, no pursuers. The stars stretched ahead like a clean page. Grant leaned back in the co-pilot seat and let out a long exhale. "So," he said, "any interest in that beach planet you mentioned?" She glanced at him. "You're inviting yourself." "Maybe." "Got plans for something boring? Hammocks, drinks, sand in awkward places, all of the above." Zalara tilted her head. "What would you even do on a beach? You don't strike me as the relaxing type." "I'm trying new things." She gave a slight nod. "All right, but if we're doing beaches, I'm picking the planet. I want warm nights and no interplanetary bounty hunters." "Deal." They flew for a while without speaking. It was the good kind of silence, the kind where nothing needed to be fixed or solved, just shared. Then Grant sat forward. "Zalara, can I ask you something real?" "Always." "When this started, you could have walked away. After that first session, after the first ping, why didn't you?" She took a moment, then answered without hesitation. "Because you looked like someone who hadn't been touched in a long time, not just physically, but really seen, and I knew what that felt like." Grant nodded, absorbing that. "I've spent a lot of time building walls. You didn't ask permission before climbing over them. You didn't stop me." "I didn't want to." They reached the edge of the system and set course for a small colony world Zalara had once visited, a quiet place with forests, clean water, and sky that turned gold at sunset. It wasn't much, but it would be theirs for as long as they wanted it. Days passed. They landed in a settlement built into the cliffs, surrounded by open sky and distant mountains. The people were friendly. The stars didn't buzz anymore. Grant found work at a local mechanics post. Nothing fancy, just hands-on labor, no questions, no drama. It suited him. Zalara started a wellness practice, offering energy treatments and her strange but effective massages. Word spread quickly. They welcomed her like she'd always belonged. Their home was a modest two-room outpost on the edge of the ridge, where the breeze rolled in at dusk and the sky went on forever. It was quiet, peaceful. One evening, Grant stepped onto the porch and found Zalara sitting with her legs curled under her, watching the sunset. He dropped beside her and handed her a drink. "What do you think?" he asked. She sipped it, eyes still on the horizon. "I think we found something rare. I keep waiting for it to disappear." "It won't," she said. "We earned this." He looked at her. "So what now?" She leaned against him. "Now we stop running. We live. We rest." He nodded. "I can do that." They sat in the fatting light, shoulder to shoulder, quiet and content. The galaxy spun on around them, busy, loud, chaotic, but out here in their little corner, everything was still. Grant turned to her. "You know, that first massage really did fix something." Zalara laughed softly. "Told you I was a professional." He grinned. "Think you can keep working on me, or are you retired?" "For you," she said. "Appointments always open." They watched the last of the sun slip below the ridge, hands intertwined, no wars left to fight. And for once, no more surprises, just the steady rhythm of peace. Together.